Okay, so this video is going to talk about the fertility process that I went through before starting chemo. It all started, I'd say, about 2 weeks before chemo. Each night, I would have to give an injection in my stomach with 2 different kinds of medication. One was called Menopur and one was called Gonal. So what they are is they're inside a needle. The Menopur, I would have to mix different solutions and stuff and then put it in the needle and then inject it. The other one was already inside of a, it's like a fancy kind of needle, and you would just twist it to the amount that the doctor told you to put, and then you would just inject it into your stomach. So I would do that for a couple of days. So for like 7 days, I did that each night. And then every other day, or like every 2 days, I would go into the fertility treatment place. They would go in and look at the follicles to make sure that they were growing bigger and making sure that they were staying healthy and all that stuff. They take your blood pressure and then check your blood and all that stuff each day. And so then, like I said, for 7 days, I just did those 2 shots. And then as I got closer, so usually the fertility time period is like 10 to 12 days, and usually the 12th day is when they would want to take out your eggs because they want them to get to a certain size. That meant that they were pretty much mature enough to take out and that they would then probably survive the freezing process. So that's why I would go in each morning, and then they would check to make sure that it got to that size. And then if it didn't, then they'd be like upping the dosage of how much I was giving myself through that medication. When it got towards like, I'd say 8 to 10 days, I would then have to take another injection, which I would take in the morning, and then I would take the 2 at night. And I did that for the next couple of days. And then once it got closer, so I was supposed to get my eggs taken out on the 28th. No, the 27th was the first day, which is a Sunday. And then they moved it to that Monday, the 28th. And then I went in for an appointment, and it still wasn't at the size that they wanted my follicles to be at. So then they were like, okay, we're gonna take them out on the 29th. And then of course, we got closer to that date, and then they were like, okay, we can't take them out till the 30th. And keep in mind, my chemo was supposed to start the 31st. So I was kind of getting a little worried, and I was a little annoyed because, you know, the process of taking the eggs out is not what takes on. Like, the procedure is literally 10 to 15 minutes long. It was just the fact that I didn't want to like rush and do that and then have to wake up the next morning and go into chemo. Like, I kind of wanted that break between the two. But I mean, I had to do what they said, and I wanted to get the best possible odds of getting the most out. So I mean, I was agreed with doing it the day before, because they told me like the only side effects that you really would have is bloating and maybe some stomach pain and nausea. And so that wasn't bad. And the reason you have those is because when you're injecting that medication into your stomach, it's making your ovaries and stuff bloat up and get bigger so that they can release the eggs and stuff so that they can be taken out. So as far as the shots and medications, it wasn't that bad. My mom would give it to me each night. I mean, at first it was a little tough because we were really nervous because we never really like, my mom has never given me a shot before. And so you just had to make sure you know you're doing it correctly, and then making sure you're mixing the correct amount into each needle and stuff like that, because you don't want to do too much. It didn't really hurt. I mean, the Menopur was probably the most painful, and it's not like, I mean, hurt like putting the needle in. It only was hurting because the medication burns when it's actually being injected. I always kept saying to my mom, I felt like my organs were like being like poisoned. The Gonal and stuff like that, I never felt anything. It felt like a regular shot you would get at the doctor's. You know, 48 hours before, you have to take the trigger shot. And so the reason we kept pushing it is because they weren't sure what kind of trigger shot they wanted to give me, and then we had to make sure that it got to a certain size. So I ended up getting, I think it's called the HCG trigger shot. That one, of course, it goes in your butt, and it didn't hurt as bad, but it was like kind of scary because my mom, like, we were really nervous because the process, it's like you have to make sure you pull out a little bit of blood and then to make sure that the like medication and the needle is working, and then you like put it in. And just the way they were describing it like made my mom really nervous, so we actually got my neighbor to come in and give me that shot. But I was probably freaking myself out more about it than I should have, because I honestly didn't even feel it when she gave it to me. But yeah, so you do that trigger shot 48 hours before, and then of course 48 hours later is when you go in for the procedure to get the egg retrieval. So I went in on the 30th to get my eggs taken out, and honestly the whole procedures part wasn't even bad. Like I don't even remember it really. We went in we had to be there at 6:30. The procedure was at 8. When I got there, they called me back pretty much like 15 minutes later. Went to the back, they put me into a hospital gown and had to put on a cap, and I just laid in the bed. The doctor came in, she kind of talked to me about the procedure, the risks of things that could happen but most likely won't happen, but you know, they have to tell you that kind of stuff. And then she told me to just wait a while, because then the person who was actually going to perform the egg retrieval would come in and talk to me again and talk about the procedure and what she was going to do. I had a nurse come in, she had to check my blood pressure and weight and all that stuff, and then they put like a bag with fluids to give me stuff, I guess, and then I kind of just waited for like 30 minutes. And then after that, I went into the room, and it was like a small like operation room. It wasn't that big. And they put you in a chair, kind of like when you're at the gynecologist and you sit in the chair and they have the stirrums and you put your feet in them, but instead of putting your feet, you put your thigh, and so you have to go all the way to the edge of the seat, and then you put your thighs on top, so your legs are like spread out like this, and then you're all the way at the end. And then next thing I know, she just injected me with the stuff to sedate me and go to sleep, and then next thing I know, I woke up and I was in the room and my mom was talking to me, and it was done, and she said it took about 15 minutes. And then I just kind of sat there. They gave me like food and water to make sure that I ate something, and then the next thing, the doctor came in, told me that they were able to take out 9 eggs and that they would call me the next day to let me know exactly how many made it to the freezing process. And then the last thing I had to do is they just wanted me to stand up and walk around and make sure that I could walk out and that I was going to be okay. And then I went home, and that was the whole thing. Overall, it wasn't a bad experience. I mean, there were some days I was kind of annoyed with, you know, the medication and having to keep doing it because I was just expecting to be done a lot sooner, and they just kept pushing it. And I know they were doing it because they wanted to make sure that they could get as many eggs as they possibly could. The doctors were all very nice. The staff is super nice. Like, I'm really glad with the place that I went through this with. They were very professional, and the people were always hopeful. Like, whenever I wanted to call, they always were there to answer my questions, and they always were checking in on me. One side effects I did have is I did have really bad bloating. So they told me to take like Advil, like super strong Advil and stuff. They did want to give me Vicodin, they asked, but we told them that I just said no, because I didn't think it would be a good idea to take Vicodin the day before chemo. I didn't know if that would affect anything, so I chose not to take Vicodin. But now I kind of wish I did, because the stomach pain was so bad. But I mean, I was fine. Like, I just took this super strong Advil, drank some Gatorade and stuff like that. The bloating did last a while. Like, it did last about 2 weeks, and they said it could last that long. So I did have the stomach pain and bloating for a pretty long time, which was weird, because usually, you know, when you get your period, you're done with bloating after a couple days, but this one was a pretty long time, and I wasn't used to it. So now it's just going to be interesting to see, like, how many made it, like, in the future, what will happen, like, if I will need to use them or if I won't need to use them. Kind of hoping that maybe I won't have to use them and that I will be able to get pregnant on my own, or that there will still be eggs that are going to be good after this chemo. That's why they don't know. It's a 50-50 chance, so that's why they tell people maybe to go through with it. But then I've heard stories where women were able to have kids on their own after, and they didn't even need to use their eggs. But I'm glad that I did it, and yeah, that's pretty much it, and I'll keep you guys updated.